Hey everybody, it's Riley at No Fun Club again. In this video, I'm going to be looking at the Spectra Sonics 610 compressor. The Spectra Sonics 610 compressor is a really interesting compressor, a bit of an oddball. It's sort of like an 1176 in its operation, but it has some funky features that make it really different. It's known by a lot of people to be sort of a crush box, like a weird thing that you can destroy sounds with. Chad Blake is well known to use it. But it was designed to be super transparent, which is often the way it is. The people who like Rupert Neve too, the Neve consoles were designed to be ultra hi-fi, but people love them for distortion. So it must be frustrating for these audio designers. Anyway, Spectra Sonics 610, gonna go into it, get a look at it. Let's do it. Yeah, okay, so I found the original manual for the Spectra Sonics 610. Some information about the operating level here, and then down here is where things get interesting. No audible overload, separate limiting and compression functions, constant threshold attack, accurate monitoring for peak versus average. Okay, so we have different modes that the 610 was designed to work in. So normal linear amplification, that's just like using it as a mic preamp basically. So let's check that out.
Okay. Huh. Yes. Hello. Okay, so this is me speaking through the Spectra Sonics 610 as a amplifier for a mic. Now, I'm using a SM7B, so that's a mic that has a notoriously low output. So it's a little too low. I wouldn't use this. I'm going to switch over to a different mic, and let's do this again. Okay, now we're talking. That's better. This is a Telefunken M80, which is a modern dynamic mic. So it's still pretty impressive. You can get a usable amount of gain just for talking, like for voiceover with this. There's no preamp. We are just going directly into this compressor. So I will say that's an impressive amount of gain. You will notice that occasionally when I say loud words, the threshold and the overload light come on. And as you're going to see with this compressor, that doesn't always mean that it's doing something audible. So the slope is like a ratio control. When the slope is set to 10, you have almost no compression. It's 1 to 1. And the limiter comes on. This is the output limiter coming on, the red one. But that doesn't always mean that there's going to actually be audible compression.
Next one, peak limiting only. So only using the limiter, not using the compression. Okay, so I can think of no better instrument to show off limiting on than a snare, because snares have a ton of transient information. So I'm just going to solo the snare. If we go over to the 610, you can see it's already doing something. So this indicator light that comes on is the indicator for limiting taking place. We're right on the edge right now where also compression's starting to happen, so I'm going to back it down a little bit. This is just limiting. When this comes on, that's the second limiter, so we don't want that yet. And the release shouldn't be doing anything because we're just limiting. The release is for the compressor, which acts on average volume. The limiter acts only on the peaks. this slope should be set all the way to 0, which for some reason 0 is 100 to 1. That's the most extreme compression curve. So this is cool. Like I said, this compressor is sort of well known as a crush box, something to smash sounds with. But it was designed in this really intelligent way to offer limiting separate from the compressor, so that when you're tracking, you don't need to worry about overloading the tape machine, because it's already taking care of those peaks that would overload your tape machine. You don't really hear it that much, but it does chop off the peaks a bit. So let's do some A/B-ing. One is compression and limiting simultaneously. So both compression and limiting. For compression and limiting, let's check out another drum sound. Let's go over to the mono kit mic, because this is going to give us a great whole kit picture type of thing, which is really fun to overcompress especially. It's already doing some stuff. Got some action on the, like with the snare, just some limiting. I'm gonna turn down the output so we don't get a ton of. Yeah. And I just love the character of this. So when you have the VU meter going, and the threshold going, that is when you're getting limiting and compression, when it's flashing like this. So if we make the release really fast, it just sounds so good. I love this compressor for this. And it's a lot, if we have a slower release, it's just a lot more transparent. A lower ratio, middle release. But why would you when it sounds so good fast? No, I'm just, there's lots of times when you don't need to crush stuff. Compression only compressing. Okay, so now we're going to use bass to demonstrate doing compression only. So the 610 is doing compression only when the light is continuously lit. It's flickering a bit, but I'd say this is mostly compression here. Let's try to do something a little cleaner or a little less extreme. Set a lower ratio by going higher on the slope control. Okay, let's try something more extreme. And remember, this comes on, that's the second, that overload light is the second limiter on the output. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get noticeable distortion, but it can. Just slam it. Slamming the bass. Now we're getting audible distortion from the limiting. And I didn't mention it yet, this meter, that's just the meter control, and this is the on-off. So these ones are the only things that affect the compression, and these lights, along with the VU, give you lots of different views of what's happening, which is really neat. Okay, let's do something very tasteful with the bass, in line with what we can assume the creators of this compressor had hoped. This bass is probably already too distorted. Okay, yeah. This compressor was certainly designed with broadcast uses in mind. So let's just try it on my voice. I'm just going to talk. I'm going to ramble. No, I'm going to talk about this compressor actually. The name Spectra Sonics is now actually owned by people who make synths. So the people making this compressor now are called Spectra 1964, and they worked for years to recreate this circuit of this original compressor. There was a time when these compressors were not at all valued. Chad Blake tells a story about finding one in a pile of garbage and paying $50 for it or something, but then having it become one of his favorite pieces of gear. Nowadays, I've seen a number of mastering engineers use these. So they are being used in a transparent way. But certainly a lot of engineers love them for the crunch. They're so good on drums. I use them on drums whenever I can. Unless people don't want that kind of like pumping sound. But even if it's something, they sound great when they're being used transparently too, but I just love them on drums, and I think I'm not alone in this. So yeah, Spectra Sonics, pretty cool company. They were a big name a long time ago. They're less known now, but they're great. Limiting and compression with additional fixed amplitude protection. It actually has a second limiter on the output. Okay, so for limiting, compression, and additional overload limiting, let's check out acoustic guitar. Because acoustic guitar is a weird one. Sometimes you'll be compressing it and you'll think it's in a good place, and then suddenly the guitar player plays something that's just wow. And so having an additional stage of limiting could be useful. And I I don't necessarily want to hear that grabbiness on acoustic guitar all the time. So having a very low ratio for the average part, the VU meter part, but then using the two limiting stages to control the peaks. Even though there might be some harmonic distortion sometimes, I actually feel like it's probably going to be more transparent that way than having something like this, where you can really hear the compressor grabbing everything. Even with the slowest release, you can really hear it doing its thing, so. You do have to be careful with acoustic guitar though, because with the distortion part, it's not like a drum where you won't notice it at all. I'm pretty satisfied with this setting for this. There's a little bit of distortion. You could use that. This is when we start getting pretty nasty, getting distortion. But I'm looking over at the converter and we're not clipping the converter. So this limiter on the output, it's stopping it. Just explosive drum sound. So we're getting limiting on the front, compression, fast compression, and then we're getting another limiter on the end and some distortion too, because it's overloading the circuit. This compressor just sounds so cool on drums. Okay, well that was the Spectra Sonics 610. I had a lot of fun making this one, particularly because I love that compressor. I think it's really cool. Hopefully you learned something, and please let us know, as always, if there's any other gear you want us to make a video about, or if there's anything we missed and you want us to go back in and do more. Until next time, please let us know if you liked or didn't like. Please like and subscribe to keep us doing it, and catch you later.